Welcome back to our course on FinTech Foundations and Overview. In this module, we're talking about the fin of FinTech, or the financial market applications of FinTech. And in this session, we're going to look at crowdfunding and business financing in a crowd type of application space, or idea financing, maybe a better way to put it. We're going to look at three companies today that are kind of interesting and different twists on this crowdfunding idea: Kickstarter, Neighborly, and Indiegogo. As we look at Kickstarter, or any of these companies, we could say there are multiple ways of thinking about crowdfunding. And so before we get into those particular companies, we want to look at crowdfunding models. There are basically three different things you can do with crowdfunding. One is you can have a reward-based model. If you fund this, you get to be a part of it, or you get to name something, or you get to have a character in the movie named after you, or you get to have an early product that we're producing. You get to be one of the first people that own this product. So you get some kind of reward, a product or a service, or you get to be an ability to be part of something in the design or naming of something. It's similar in some ways to traditional funding, where you would say, I'll give you coupons if you will give me money, and you can then use the coupons to invest in my company. I, for example, as an angel investor, got a pitch from a restaurant, a rapidly growing restaurant, very successful, and a very good restaurant. And this particular restaurant said, as an incentive for investors, if you invest $10,000 in our convertible debenture, our convertible bond, we will give you $1,000 of dining coupons in addition to interest and equity in return. These 1,000 in dining coupons are transferable, so you can give them to family and friends. You can let your wife take her friends out. And I mentioned this to my wife, who said, yes, we should fund that one. I said, what, why? You think it's a good deal? No, I want those coupons. I want to go out to dinner. I like that restaurant. I can take my friends and it's free. Getting something for nothing, kind of an idea of kickstarting or crowdfunding. Sorry, not just kickstarting, but crowdfunding in general. I get some kind of reward in addition, perhaps, to some kind of equity participation or upside. Sometimes we also do it for social welfare. We want to fund something because it's good for society. It's good for the community. It's good for something I believe in. If you fund this, it will help us to save the planet. We'll be able to clean up the environment. We'll be able to do something with an endangered species, or we'll be able to fight some political issue or challenge. You could argue, by the way, that Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign in the last election was largely crowdfunding as a model. Rather than going and raising money from large institutional investors in a campaign, he went out to the people and said, how about $3 and be part of our revolution? Of course, he didn't win, but that isn't because he didn't have an idea that resonated with people, and it isn't because he didn't have a good campaign. There were a number of factors that combined, and sometimes it upsets people to even talk about it. So I'm not going to go down that path, but let's just say crowdfunding was important to Bernie, and it probably will play a role if or when he runs again. Social welfare, therefore, part of this crowdfunding model, but also equity-based funding, where you would go out to the crowdfunding and say, if you fund this business, if you participate in this, you will own a piece of it, and as it becomes more successful, you will participate in the upside. That could be a traditional equity model. You'll get shares, or it could be you'll get a portion of the revenue, or you will get a portion of the profits. And so there's different ways of structuring some kind of upside from this business. But the idea of rewarding people for being involved in this crowdfunding model. Now we're going to look at three companies. The first of which we're going to look at is Kickstarter. This is one of the largest crowdfunding platforms, particularly for creative projects, and their goal is to bring creative projects to life, whether it's art or music or movies or other creative projects. And sometimes it's products that are creative projects. So many things can be funded under Kickstarter. Not everything. There's some businesses they won't allow under Kickstarter. For example, if you want to do a biotech startup, they say, no, we don't want genetically modified organisms. We just feel philosophically, as a socially liberal company, we don't want to play in that space or game. And that might be unfortunate in some ways, because some people from a social platform or an arts platform are saying, yeah, but we could have vegan alternatives to meat, which are plants that taste like chicken or beef. You can, and there are companies doing that, and they're funding startups, but not through Kickstarter. Kickstarter doesn't want that. But you can offer rewards as well as or experiences. Be the first to see this movie at a preview if you're the Kickstarter, or you get to be in the movie. You get to be one of the extras if you're a Kickstarting funder, or nominate someone else to be, or you get to vote on who some of the co-stars should be. So you get some kind of experience or reward for putting up the money. It's similar to kind of the old model, old school 300 years ago of rulers or rich people being a patron of the arts. And as a patron of the arts, you would pay the cost or salary for Mozart to be able to create a beautiful symphony. And so Mozart needs to live, he needs to have his rent paid, he needs to pay for his alcohol or drugs or whatever else he needs to help him be creative, and therefore he needs a patron. He would rather work on his own, but he didn't have Kickstarter, and so he couldn't raise money in a peer-to-peer way. He had to find a patron. Now with Kickstarter, we can have micro patrons. Everybody can participate. It's more democratic. And it's more diversified. You can go to the world and say, I just need 40 people to give me $1,000 and I can get this thing done. Or 400 people to give me $100. Now they've raised over, or nearly $2 billion in total pledged funding from almost 10 million backers to fund over 250,000 creative projects over the past few years. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of funding. And so that's a creative alternative. Some people have said Kickstarter is not that different from being able to go out to your community, go out to your friends, family and friends, raise some money, people you know raise some money. I would say it is different because unlike other efforts to raise money to fund a venture, which tended to focus on the financial returns, you now can say, help me fund this social project, which might have some benefits to society. It might have some benefits to you to be a participant in it. You may get a product as well as providing equity funding, so it can blend multiple models. As my restaurant example showed, you could do that in the physical world, and it has happened, but it's more rare than it is with Kickstarter. Kickstarter can combine, therefore, different funding approaches, as well as other companies in this space, that is different from what we had as options before. It's not categorically completely different, but it feels different in terms of its user experience.